Hey there, and welcome back to the TBH Video Journal. You may recall that last January I started a series that I call the Skinning Rack Series. In there we talked about how to skin and quarter a deer. We showed you how to cape out a trophy skull. We talked about how to measure a trophy rack, and of course we did our sausage making video. So I want to continue that series today and kind of backtrack just a little bit, and I want to show you that once we get the deer skinned and quartered, what we're going to do with it and all of the different parts that we have here. And I've got laid out on the table, I've got the shoulders. Of course we got two shoulders. I've got the two back straps. Those are nice looking back straps there. We'll trim those up a little bit. I've got two tenderloins that came from the inside, kind of the inside of the rib cage, and then of course we have our two quarters. In addition to that, we have some neck meat, some rib meat, some trim, different things that we pulled off and threw in the cooler here. But today what I want to focus on is really just these four quarters. The goal of this series is to show you that it doesn't have to be intimidating to process your own deer. Processing your deer can also be very expensive, and taking it to a processor can cost you a couple $100, $300 depending on what you have made with it. And with a little bit of know-how, a little bit of equipment, you can process your own deer at home, make some great cuts, and save yourself some money. With the money that you can save on processing, you can invest in the nominal equipment that you need, maybe a grinder, maybe a dehydrator, a sausage stuffer. All right, so I'm going to start off first. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time with these shoulders. Typically what I like to do is either just trim the meat off and use it for my sausage grind, or what I like to do with it is just basically sever it at this joint right here and then put it all in a crock pot and just slow cook it. So you can have yourself like shredded venison tacos, you can make a roast out of it, any number of things that you can do, but typically you want to cook these shoulders low and slow. So I'm going to take those and I'm just going to put them for now back in the cooler. I'm not going to focus a whole lot on the back strap. A lot of people consider the delicacy of the whitetail deer. So typically what I'll do is I'll get these cleaned up and I'll freeze them whole. And what that allows me to do is it gives me a lot of flexibility in the way that I can use it. So if my wife wants to fry some of it, I can pull it out, I can chop it up, and we can fry it. If I want to do a whole sous vide back strap and just cook it whole, or if I want to stuff it, I can always do it that way. But by freezing it whole, it keeps my options open what I can do with it, rather than slicing it up and being limited with how you can use that. So again, I'm going to put these back in the cooler, keep them on ice. Tenderloins kind of the same way. Typically I'll do these whole, very simple cut. Don't want to overcook them, so I'll typically cook those on the grill. But the main thing that I want to focus on today is this hind quarter. So we've got the hind quarter of the deer here, and you can see this would be the left, basically the deer's left rear leg, and you can see what we've got is this is kind of the thigh, and then it breaks down in here into the calf muscle. What we're going to do is we're going to separate out each of these muscle groups into a separate muscle group. And if you look real close, and once you get it trimmed up, you can actually see that there are lines in here that will help define where you want to make your cuts. On the top right here we have what is called the sirloin tip, and you can see that that's going to be kind of that thigh of the deer, and that's the sirloin tip. That'll make a great roast. Over here we're going to have the bottom round is right here on kind of on the side right here. Underneath that we're going to have what's called the top round, and then in between there we're going to have the eye of round. So we'll talk about those as we get closer to them, and then of course we're going to have our deer shanks that we'll use, and we can slow cook those in a roaster as well. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is, again, there's any number of things. You can either start trimming this off the bone initially, or what I like to do is just find that little line. You can see the separation in here and just kind of make my initial cut. Now for this you want a good boning knife, good sharp knife with a flexible tip. We'll use, this is a little outdoor edge knife that I have. It's not my really good knife, but it's the one that I have handy right now. And so I'm just going to kind of trim right along that line underneath that membrane, and you can kind of start seeing the separation already. Now once we have that cut, you can do a lot of this by using your fingers and actually just ripping it apart, kind of using your knife where you need to, but you get your fingers down in there and you can actually feel the separation of the muscles. So we're just going to follow that along just like this. On the top we're going to have some trim that we'll cut off there that comes from the loin, kind of that sirloin. But what we're doing here is we're actually working with this bottom round right here. And you can see I've got it separated as we cut in here. And a lot of that, again, I just pulled apart with my fingers. And we're just gonna kind of keep working that in. Once you get down to that bone, of course, you just wanna just cut it right off. All right, so we're gonna cut that. And let the muscles show you where they are. Again, using your fingers, using the knife, using the tip of the knife. The main thing that you want to do is use the knife tip. Now, of course, there are plenty of other videos on YouTube with professional butchers that can show you in more detail and do it a lot quicker than I can. But I just want to do a real quick, simple video showing you how you can do it, and then you can investigate it further if you want to follow along. So, again, what we're doing is we're just separating that out, and here we go. We've got our bottom round, which is the first cut. If you look right here, I'm going to kind of interrupt myself, but once you get underneath that bottom round, there's a gland that's right in here, and that gland will kind of taint the meat. And you can see where that is. It's a kind of a conglomeration of tendons and such that meet right there, and then you can see that just that little gland right there. So we're going to go ahead and cut that off, and we're going to throw that in our scrap pile here. Kind of below that, we're working on our eye of round. It's going to sit right here, and that almost looks like a little tenderloin sitting there, and we can cook it kind of the same way. So I'm just going to go ahead and peel that off, and again, just letting the muscles show us where to make the cuts. Okay, so we've got that muscle right there. So we've got our bottom round, we've got our eye of round. And this is the good part that we're after right here, and that's that top round. So we're going to take that, and we're just going to slice it right there and kind of separate it again. Right in here is where the bone is, and this connects to the bone. So we're just going to use our knife to kind of start separating it from that bone. This is that ball joint. You can see it right here. So we've got that ball joint. We're just going to kind of start carving around there, separating it from right here where the shank is, cutting it along kind of that knee, and then, you know, anywhere where you encounter bone, we're just going to shave it right off that bone right there. All right, so we can kind of start separating it here. I'm going to trim it up just a little bit. Throw that in our scrap pile. Okay, again, use our fingers to kind of separate that out. We use our knife to kind of trim that up. And then there we have it. We have our top round. So that's our good. We can make steaks out of this. We can make jerky. We can use any of this. There are a few things that we can trim off of here to kind of clean up a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean those up, and we'll be able to see a little bit better. So on the other side of that bone, from where that top round is, again, kind of that thigh muscle, if you will. Let me just trim this off here, this top part of it, so we can kind of get a better view of it. But I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. All of this will go into my trim pile, and we'll grind that up for sausage. I've actually been using it a little bit differently, and I'll talk about that in a video to come, and canning some of that. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So I'm going to put that in my trim pile. But you can see right here we've got that football shaped roast. That's the sirloin tip. And you can see again here we have that ball joint. It's just at the top side of that ball joint. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep slicing that. I'm just carving it right off the bone right here, working my way around. Again, using just the tip of the knife, and then we'll just follow that bone along, flip it over, kind of do the other side, kind of cut it right across there at the knee joint. And again, there are many butchers that have much better knife skills than what I have, but I'm just showing you my technique for it and how simple it is. Even a yahoo like me can do it. So anyway, I'm just taking that, cutting around where that knee joint is, and there we have our football shaped sirloin tip. Again, we'll clean that up just a little bit, and that makes an excellent roast. You can slice it up, you can make jerky out of it. There's any number of things that you can do. So these are the four main components of that hind quarter that I wanted to get out of there. And of course we have, I'll cut this, and we'll have our shanks. We'll cut that into a, in fact, I'll just go ahead and do that right now. We're just going to separate that, find where the joints fit together and roll in there, and then you can just use your knife to just slice that off, cut around those joints. You may have to work your knife in there a little bit. Be careful with that little joint as you roll it around, not to break your knife, especially using a little thin knife like this. Okay, so I get that. I'll feed that to Sky. She'll enjoy that. Or can make some bone stock out of that as well, but in this case I'm going to give it to Sky. I'm going to put it in my scrap pile right there. But I'll probably just go ahead and cut that with my loppers, and then put that, either slow cook it for a roast or for some shredded venison tacos. Any number of things we can do with that. We can pull that off and we can put it in the grinder as well. It's got a lot of that muscle tissue in there, so sometimes it can clog up a smaller grinder. So probably what I'll do is just freeze that whole just like it is, just like I did with those shoulders. Put it in a roaster, slow cook it, and have some good tacos with it. So again, what I'll do with these is I've got my sirloin tip, I've got my bottom round, I've got my nice little eye of round right here, and then I've got that top round. And I'll go ahead and clean these up a little bit. I won't do that on video, but I'll get these cleaned up a little bit. And then, like I say, I'll freeze these whole. I'll take the top round from both the legs, freeze those together. I'll do the same with each of these cuts, and then that way when it comes time for preparation, if I want to use it for grind for sausage, I just go and pull out the cuts that I want. If I decide I want to make a roast, I can do that. If I've got some cuts that I want to can, I can just go take the cuts that I want to do that with. If I want to make some jerky, I can go pull this top round out, slice it up real thin, put it in the dehydrator, and I've got jerky. All right, so that was just a real quick rundown of, again, the different quarters of a deer that we have, how I break them down, how I use the different cuts, what I do with them. I'm not a professional butcher, but it shows you just how easy it is for you to do this kind of stuff at home. Let me know if you have different techniques that you use. Leave comments in the comment section below, and of course let me know if this inspires you to start processing your own meat at home. Again, I appreciate you joining us on the TBH Video Journal. Hit the like button if you like it, and be sure to subscribe. Again, we're trying to increase our subscriber base. We look forward to seeing you on the next one.